Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Wonder Series. I'm Denise Stiegel. I am your host here of the Wonder Series, which is sponsored by livinghealthylist.com. So the point of the Wonder Series, why are you guys listening, is truly to help you to wonder what life would be like if you looked at it from a different perspective, if you kind of looked outside the box that you've been living in. And really open yourself up, change your mindset to the opportunities and possibilities out there, and how ultimately that can help you to lead that healthy, happy, vibrant life, joy-filled life that you have been looking for. Not that life is bad. Most of us, we kind of do okay. Life is fine, but we want more than fine. We want awesome. So today I'm really excited to talk with my guest here on the Wonder Series. Her name is Beth Smith. Beth is an integrative health practitioner. I love her. The name of her company is Better Health by Beth. So as I said, Beth is an integrative health practitioner who uses functional medicine to help her clients get to the root cause, love that, root cause of their hormonal imbalances, allowing them to live the life they want to live. Now, ladies, if you are anywhere between 35 basically, because that's kind of when I started, and beyond, this is a conversation you're going to want to listen to, because hormone imbalances happen to us throughout life. And so pay attention. Let's hear it from Beth. Beth, welcome to the Wonder Series.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about who you are, how you got to this place where you started Better Health by Beth, and what you do to help your clients.
Sure. So I am kind of my client. That's how I got here. I really, honestly, yes, at 35, it kind of starts for a lot of women, but for me, it really started in my teenage years. I always had hormonal imbalances. I always had heavier periods. I always had a lot going on. I was actually diagnosed with PCOS in my 20s, and I was given traditional routes to deal with it, birth control, metformin, things like that, and they worked until they didn't work. And so as I aged, because I already had hormonal imbalances, things just got worse. And so all of the things that we deal with as we age, with the hair loss and the bad skin and the weight gain and anxiety and low energy, all of those things started happening to me. And, much to my husband's chagrin, I lost my libido completely. And these are all things that we're told as women. It's just part of getting older. It's just what happens. And I just was at a point that I didn't want to accept that. I wasn't living the life I wanted to live. And I was being told, well, it's just part of getting older. And there were so many things going on in my body. And I actually ended up at 48 having a hysterectomy, thinking that was going to solve all of my problems. And so, unfortunately, that really kind of was the beginning of kind of a perfect storm of my body shutting down on me hormonally. And so I think a lot of times we take these approaches that work for a little while and then they don't. And a lot of women end up on that path to having hysterectomy, thinking it's going to solve all their problems, where your hormones don't go away just because your uterus does. And so, unfortunately, nobody really explained that to me. And while some of the problems went away with that, I got new problems to replace them. And so what I really learned with functional medicine, as my body started shutting down, and my doctor just kept saying the weight gain is because you're eating too much, eat less. If your anxiety is too much, we can give you an antidepressant. And I didn't want to be on an antidepressant. I wanted answers. And so what I found with functional medicine is it really looks at the root cause. Why do you have anxiety? Why is your hair falling out? Why is your skin dry and dull? Why are you gaining weight even though you're only eating 1,200 calories a day? And so if we can look at what is creating the imbalances, then we can work on rebalancing. And so that's really why I got into this, because once I started learning this for myself and started seeing my body change and the anxiety going away, and I started sleeping again and all of the things, I thought, gosh, I felt so alone and so isolated. And I think when you're, as a woman, when you're going through something like that, it is very isolating and you feel alone because it's not something that you just talk about freely. And so I really wanted to create a space where women could talk about it freely and know that they're not the only one going through it.
I so appreciate that, on so many levels. And, one of the things, like when I started, I was about 37 when I started to notice things changing. And, what was the first thing I did? I went and talked to my mom. And, God bless her soul. She said to me, "Oh, Denise, I don't know. I think you need to go see your doctor." I'm like, "Hey, did that." And like you, I had gained some weight, and I'm like, I work out 6 days a week. I walk a lot. I cook 6 days a week. So I know what I'm eating. And like you said that, I kind of was sitting between 12 and 1400 calories. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I was exactly like you. I was told by a doctor who actually is who specialized in menopause and aging. She said to me, first of all, stop taking all of that natural crap that you're taking. And it was mostly essential oils and some herbs. Mm-hmm. She says, and then you just have to stop. You just have to stop eating as much. And I'm thinking, thank you. You did not help me. And so like many women, like you say, it's kind of isolating. And my husband, as a man, really just didn't understand what was going on. One day actually said to me, "Denise, we got to figure this out because you're driving me crazy." And I didn't know that I had been. I didn't realize that, my hormones were doing this, and so were my moods, and probably my sleep patterns, which were affecting my moods.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I know when my anxiety was at its worst and I just was barely functioning, and my husband would say, just don't worry about it. Well, if I could not worry, I wouldn't worry, but you can't stop it. But yeah, I think sometimes we don't even realize how bad it's gotten until somebody close to us points it out. Because I think as women, we focus so much on taking care of other people that we kind of ignore what our body is telling us. And it starts with whispers. And if we're in tune to that and we're listening to the whispers, then we can kind of catch it. But unfortunately, so many times, because we are so focused on everybody but ourselves, we don't listen until our body starts screaming at us.
Mm-hmm. And then at that stage, like you said, you kind of go to the doctor thinking, okay, fix this.
Yeah.
And there's no fix. It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk about these hormone balances and kind of getting down to that root cause. How do we do that? How do we actually start, starting today? What do we do? What do we need to look at?
So there are several foundational things that everybody needs to look at and that you can do without a hormone test or without even working with a practitioner. And the number one bottom line if you can only start with one thing, it is nutrition. And I always say nutrition and not diet because I don't want to put that word around it. It's truly about feeding your body what is going to nourish it. And so really taking an honest look at what you are putting into your body. And I always tell my clients, because they're like, well, do I have to give up this or do I have to give up that? And I always say, you don't have to give up anything. But if you want to balance your hormones for a period of time while your body is working on balance, you may need to set it aside. And so really focusing on what serves my body, what nutrients do I need to put into my body to create what I want my body to be. And so yes, weight is a huge piece of that for most women. We want to be a certain weight because we feel confident at that weight. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we've been taught that our self-worth is about a number on a scale. And so it's really about helping women change that mindset of, if you want healthy hormones so that you can be there for your family, or you can travel, or you can run marathons, or whatever it is that brings you joy, you have to take an honest look at what you're putting into your body. Because if you want your body to give you what you're asking of it, you have to give it what it needs to provide that. So the number one foundational piece is nutrition.
I say
This,
hallelujah to that, because that is first and foremost the first thing that I talk to my clients about is eat real food.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
like you, we don't talk diets. We talk about, everybody's eating style is a little different.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like what works for you. But you make a very good point. You don't necessarily need to completely cut something out, but you may need to do that for a period of time.
Right,
Um,
exactly. So I really help my clients focus on what I call the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time, let's focus. Now, in the beginning, we may have to cut it out completely, but let's get to the point where 80% of the time we're putting what our body needs into it. And 20% of the time we're out there enjoying and living life. Have the cheesecake, have the French fries, whatever it is that, because again, so much of our culture is centered around food and enjoying experiences with friends and family and colleagues around food. And so you don't want to be that person that goes to an event and says, yeah, I can't eat anything but a piece of celery. You want to go enjoy, you want to have a cocktail, you want to have whatever is being served, and you should be able to. But when you're in that beginning stage of rebalancing, you might have to say no to some things that you love, and that's hard for us. And that's where a lot of people kind of will not say no, and then feel like they've ruined everything, so just stop. So
right. And,
yeah,
oh, well, I screwed up, so this doesn't work for me.
exactly,
As
exactly.
opposed to kind of going and doing it, enjoying it, no guilt, move on.
It's life. That's it.
Right.
So yeah, small steps add up. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say, and this is true for almost everybody, just because by the nature of the world that we live in, is nervous system regulation. And it's something that nobody talks about and nobody thinks about, but we live in a world where we are always on. We never turn off. I mean, women come to me all the time and say, I'm not sleeping at night. But then as we talk, they're laying in bed doing this for 2 hours before they
Yeah.
actually get to sleep. And so sleep is an important piece of it, but before we work on your sleep, we need to work on your nervous system. And so bringing the body out of that fight or flight state and really giving women the tools to learn to be in tune with, okay, my body is in a state of fight or flight or stress versus a more parasympathetic state, what we call rest and digest state, so that they can produce the hormones they need to. Because the way our bodies are designed, if we're in a state of fight or flight, the sex hormones are not going to be produced properly, because the body is intelligent and it knows these are the things that are needed to recreate life, whether that's what you're trying to do or not. And so you're in a state of fight or flight, your life is in danger, we're not going to let that happen.
We don't need that right now.
Exactly. So it's going to create the stress, the cortisol and all the things that contribute to the weight. And the anxiety and all of those things. So those are the two basic things. There are other things as well, but I would say if somebody doesn't know where to start, those are the two places to start. Really take an honest look at what you're putting into your body, and then really focus on trying to regulate your nervous system.
I think that's such an important piece because, nowadays, like you said, the client that's sitting in bed scrolling, we've become a society that is so connected that like there's a fear of missing out. We have this FOMO if we don't know who posted whatever on social media. And it's amazing when you do step back, you don't actually miss it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I have had a hard time. So, of course, in my business, a huge part of that is social media. And so I have to show up every day for my audience and give them value every day and post on my stories. And I love doing that. I love providing for my audience, and I love interacting with people through social media. But I also found that it was affecting me it was affecting my nervous system. Mentally, it was just a lot. And so I, for the past month, have really made it a habit on the weekends to just disconnect. And I don't, you're right, I don't miss it. I love it because it's a great way to connect with people. And it's a great way to help people that need that help. But it's so important. And I've noticed a huge change in my mental state and just being able to turn my nervous system off and get out of that fight or flight state. And I feel refreshed on Monday morning when I sign back on to interact with people. And I don't feel like it's a chore at this point. So yeah, I think you're right. We forget how to disconnect. And honestly, sometimes I know I've been guilty of this. I've got the TV on, I've got my laptop in my lap typing while I'm watching TV, and I've got my phone in this hand responding to a post. So not only do we not know how to disconnect, sometimes we've got multiple things kind of stimulating us all at once.
Right. And one of the things that I talk about, we've talked about two things that are, really important, nutrition and nervous system. One of the things that I work with clients, I talk to them about is when you're eating, because on top of that, a lot of times people are now watching the TV, have the phone, computer right by, and then they're sitting with their dinner or their lunch or whatever they're eating. Mm-hmm. And that just throws an extra layer of stress into that mix.
Absolutely. And it truly does affect your digestion. And, and then you're dealing with the bloating and the sluggishness and all of the things. So yeah, and you've got the high cortisol, which is spiking your insulin. So yeah, it's a big, ugly circle that if we just consciously take a minute to slow down, that's one thing in our house that we really consciously do is have electronic free dinners. Not many people sit down at the dinner table anymore, but we sit down. And I, even when I'm by myself, because most mornings I eat breakfast by myself, everybody's off doing their own thing, and I go work out before I eat. And so I still make an effort to sit at the kitchen table. It would be very easy to open the laptop and start answering emails or posting on social media, but I make a conscious effort to put the phone away and sit down and eat my breakfast at the table so that my brain knows, okay, this is time to take in nutrients and digest.
Mm-hmm. I read a book a couple of years ago, and it was 21 days of good habits to basically incorporate. And the first one was about this topic. Basically, it said an hour before, like after you get up, once you get up, do not touch your phone or any kind of electronics for at least an hour. Mm-hmm. Do what you need to do, slowly, kind of work your way into the day. And at first I thought, okay, whatever, not such a big deal. Until I actually, I read it and I was like, okay, I can start this on Monday. So Monday came around, I got out of bed. First thing I went to go looking for my phone. So I now have this habit. I don't touch the phone. Typically, I try not to touch the phone until about 9 o'clock in the morning. Like you, I get up, I do my workout, I have a bite to eat, and then I can start my day. Mm-hmm. What I have found is my day is so much nicer, less stressful. Obviously, this cortisol level that we're struggling with. And I do want to get back to that, we've mentioned cortisol a couple of times. So I do want to touch on that and really kind of dive a little bit deeper, because we all know cortisol, flight and flight. Yeah. We've heard it. But what does it really mean? I mean, how does it really affect everything else? So it's one hormone that's affecting all of these other things. How does it do that and why?
So when your cortisol is elevated, so we have a natural rhythm for our cortisol. So it should be higher in the morning, and then throughout the day, it should slowly lower. And then by bedtime, it should be at its lowest point, and your body should be ready for rest. Mm-hmm. So what happens is we wake up, we hit that phone immediately, we're kicking in, or our nervous system never turns off. And throughout the day, we just go. We wake up, maybe we oversleep, we're rushing out the door, we grab a cup of coffee, we don't have time for breakfast, we're drinking that coffee, which creates an adrenaline rush, which is spiking the cortisol, and we just rush throughout the entire day. And so what happens to people is that cortisol level stays up here instead of naturally decreasing. And when your body is producing cortisol, especially when it's producing cortisol at a higher level than it should be, then it's inhibiting the production of those other hormones. So your progesterone, your estrogen, even testosterone for women, those are being inhibited because the cortisol hormone is your stress hormone. And that's what tells your body to go into fight or flight. 200 years ago, 300, 400 years ago, the world that existed at the time, your cortisol would be elevated, not because you had a screen in front of you or you were sitting in traffic and going to be late for work, but because you were being chased by a bear or a mountain lion or whatever. And so your body knew, okay, we're in danger. So let's go to send this cortisol to all the things that need to be alert and protect us and keep us alive. And so our body knows that. And it goes back to, okay, we're in danger, so we're not going to produce these hormones that can create life. And so that's kind of what happens. What also happens, and this is where so many of us have the weight issues, we stay in this constant state of fight or flight, and elevated cortisol is directly linked to elevated insulin. And so we have insulin resistance. And many times we'll have a client that their A1C is fine. And that's really what kind of a medical doctor is looking at to determine, if you're at risk for diabetes or not. And it's an important number to look at. And so they look at your A1C and they say, yeah, it's normal, but they never look at your insulin. And so do you have high insulin? And if you do, what that's telling us is you've got some insulin resistance going on. And so your body's still not processing it right. So you don't have diabetes or pre-diabetes because your A1C is fine, but your insulin is high. So your body's not processing the insulin the way it should. So it's kind of a vicious cycle where the spiked cortisol, and when it stays at high levels, is creating the spiked insulin. And that's kind of creating the insulin resistance, which goes back to the hormones not processing correctly. It's not all going to the correct place. So it's all a big circle, and they're all interrelated, and one has to be working properly for them to all work properly.
Sure. That said, though, I do want to touch on estrogen. Because that the phrase estrogen dominance, I hear that all the time in our circles, and I think it's unclear. It seems to be clear estrogen dominant. I've got a lot of estrogen, but we're talking now that, it's really the cortisol that's really causing the challenges. So what exactly is this estrogen dominance, and where does that fit into the mix when it comes to hormone balancing?
Yeah. So a lot of times we think that estrogen dominance is, I just have too much estrogen. And many times that is the case. And so while your cortisol might be spiked, you may still have high estrogen. A lot of times that's coming in, maybe your body's not producing it as much as it should, and the other numbers will kind of tell us how your body's really producing. But we have so many things in our environment that are what are called endocrine or hormone disruptors, and they mimic estrogen in our body. And so plastics and a lot of the things that are used in our skincare products and even cash register receipts have these phytoestrogens in them, kind of artificial estrogen like substances. And so when they're absorbed into our body takes it and thinks that it's estrogen and creates those estrogen dominant symptoms. And one thing that a lot of people don't look at is, yes, you have estrogen dominant symptoms, but your hormones still may be suppressed and your estrogen number might be low. And they look and say, well, your estrogen's normal, but you're still having the symptoms of estrogen dominance. But what they don't look at is your progesterone and where it's at in ratio to your estrogen. Because if that ratio is off, even if your estrogen looks low or looks in the normal range, it can still create the estrogen dominant symptoms. So there are a lot of pieces to it, but one of the biggest pieces in today's environment is really those environmental estrogens that get absorbed into our body.
I see. What is the best way for us to learn, where we are hormonally. Like, how do we, I years ago, a couple years ago, 2 years ago, I went to the doctor and had my, thyroid tested, because I was having some, some issues. My mom, has thyroid. It's in my family. And again, told that, oh, as you get older, your thyroid just, you'll end up on Synthroid, you'll end up doing this. And I was told, it's normal.
Mhm.
One, I guess, what's normal, but also, like, how do you know how do you know what the test is, or how do you know how to get these, the true numbers?
So if you go to your doctor, the numbers that they're going to give you, um, you're going to, most women are going to be told your labs are normal, because medical testing is designed to look for a disease state. And most women are not in a state of disease. So if you're at the very top end of a range or the very bottom end of a range, then they're going to say, yes, you have a problem, and here's a medication to suppress your symptoms. And so many of us, we go to the doctor and we know something's wrong, and we're told your labs are normal. And it's beyond frustrating. So functional medicine looks at optimal ranges. So our goal as functional medicine providers is to help you not get to a disease state. Our goal is for you to never be in the top end or the bottom end of the range and be in a disease state. Our goal is to keep you in an optimal range. And so it looks at optimal ranges for your hormones, the functional medicine lab testing. And any functional medicine provider, I'm an integrative health practitioner. I'm not a medical doctor, but I have been thoroughly trained by a naturopathic doctor. I went through a program that gave me the qualifications to use these tests with my clients. You can go to functional medicine doctors. You can go to someone like an integrative health practitioner. There are functional nutritionists that can do it. So there are different paths. It depends on the right path, but that's the path to take if you really want to know what your optimal numbers are. And again, functional medicine is going to look at the root cause. Now, what I would advise for anybody that's looking for a provider, this is me personally, everybody's different. I have had many clients that say, well, I tried a functional medicine doctor or this or that, but all they did was give me a bunch of supplements, but didn't really tell me what to do. So here's my approach on supplements. Supplements are great. They are wonderful, and they're perfect to support your body where it needs support for a short amount of time. But I personally never go straight to supplements, because if we get reliant on supplements and that's the only thing that they're doing is saying these supplements are going to help, they are going to help you feel better. Absolutely. But it's just like going and taking a pharmaceutical. It's going to mask the symptom. And if we aren't addressing those things like your nutrition and your sleep and your nervous system regulation, then that's all it's doing. And you're going to be dependent on this supplement, just like you are the pharmaceuticals. So they're great. They're fabulous. Pharmaceuticals have a time and a place, and there are
Absolutely.
times that they're needed, but it should not be the first course of action. And so my advice for anybody is, if you really want to get to the root cause and you really want to know where your imbalances are, functional medicine lab testing is going to look at that versus the disease state. And my second piece of advice would be, find a practitioner that's really going to look for the root cause and really address all of the things, and only use supplements as support while you are rebalancing.
I so appreciate that, because as you were saying, I was like, yep, been there 2 different times, very different philosophies, but here, take these supplements. Well, I've never heard of this. What does it do? And as someone whose background is in nutrition, to me, supplements are, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamins, magnesium, like the things that you get from food. When they were giving me these other things, and I'm like, well, what's it supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
That for me was a red flag. So I really appreciate that. That you said exactly what I do. Supplements are there to kind of fill in the gaps. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We are close to time, so I want to have you tell everyone, how do people find you? What's the best way to connect or to work with you?
Sure. So all of my channels are Better Health by Beth. So my website is betterhealthbybeth.com. You can find me on Instagram or TikTok, Better Health by Beth. And if you want to reach out by email, it's just admin at Better Health by Beth. I am very active on Instagram and in my DMs there. I respond to all emails. So that's the best way to reach me. And if you want to work one-on-one, right now I'm only taking one-on-one clients. I'm not doing any groups. So I do work one-on-one. If you are interested in one-on-one, or you just have more questions, or you just want to know a little bit more, I offer free consultations. So you can go to my website and book a free consultation, and we can kind of talk through what you're dealing with and if it's a good fit. And I can give you a little more detail about what the program looks like.
Thank you so much. I think this is fabulous. I really appreciate our conversation. I hope this is the first of many where we can dive a little deeper into some of the challenges that women have throughout life. Obviously, hormone imbalances is a big one for many of us. And I do appreciate the fact that, you basically said to us in the beginning, it doesn't have to be that way. So Beth, thank you again for being with us today on the Wonder Series.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you all for being here on listening to today's episode of the Wonder Series, sponsored by livinghealthylist.com. We're here every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can catch us on any place where you find your podcast, but also check out our YouTube channel at Living Healthy List. Till next week, I will leave you with this: healthy living for a happy life. Have a great week, everyone.